Hello everyone, Dorrani, Connor and Alex here from VG247 with the promised follow-up Street Fighter 6 video. In this video, we're going to go over some more stuff because Alex didn't get his chance to say what he thought of what he played of Street Fighter 6. Plus, you get to see more gameplay, and of course, Connor is here to shed some more light with his fighting game knowledge. Alex has a lot of fighting game knowledge as well, but just an opportunity for you to see more gameplay. I know there's more gameplay out there, but ours is HD, high quality gameplay, and there is some comments in the preview video that we want to address as well, just so there's no confusion about what you're seeing on screen. So, Alex.
Hello. I got really confused then because you said it's Dorrani, Connor, and Alex, and I was like, Dorrani's surname isn't Connor.
What?
Like, really confused.
It's the morning.
It is the morning, and it's in the middle of all this not E3 crap. So it's like I was up until 1 a.m. working on stuff last night, and it's 10 a.m. when we record this. So I feel like I barely had any sleep, and I'm tired, and I'm miserable. However, one thing to not be miserable about is Street Fighter 6, which I think is rad. I do want to say, a lot of the footage we posted, it's quite mashy because you just have an hour and it's just like you're just mashing it out. You're not really getting into the deep mechanics. And to be fair, the footage of us getting into the deep mechanics isn't the footage Dorrani would use because it's us. It's one of us standing still while the other does stuff,
right,
and tries stuff, which isn't interesting. I think the people who were at Summer Games Fest is like we had the advantage of we had a quiet room, so we could hear the music and hear the commentary and stuff like that. But we only had it for an hour, whereas the people at Summer Games Fest were actually able to. They were in a loud room, so they couldn't perhaps take in the atmosphere of the game as much.
Yeah.
But they could lab it because they literally had 2 whole days. Like there were people there, like shout out to Max and people like that who literally went to Summer Games Fest, and I don't think they actually played anything else that was there. They just trolled on those Street Fighter setups for 2 whole days. So I'm slightly jealous about, but it is what it is. So I don't know where to start. Right, I guess we'll talk about the game mechanically, but one thing I want to point out first is the trailer that everyone's seen. Obviously, that is split into sections when you actually look at it. So all the stuff at the start of the trailer is from World Tour up to the point where you see those cutscenes of Ryu and Chun-Li. And then it actually says Fighting Ground. And one of the things that I learned from this build is that is actually a division of clearly those cutscenes of Chun and Ryu are from World Tour. It's from when you meet those characters in World Tour. Right. I think it'll be interesting to see if that girl character that Chun is shown fighting, or Chun is shown shown fighting, is what's her name? Lei Fang?
It's a girl she saves from like bison and.
Okay.
It'll be interesting to see if it's her or if that is a created character, because it's pretty obvious that World Tour is going to have a created character. But I think that's probably her adopted daughter, right? So you see those cutscenes of Ryu and Chun-Li, and then it switches and you get the scene where they're sort of walking through the garage, building, warehouse, whatever you want to call it, and it's got the versus screen, and that's when the Fighting Ground footage starts, where you actually see this real in-game footage. And so it's clear to me now, having played it, that those are... And they're almost... At least if this build is accurate to what the final game will be, what's interesting is they are discrete menus. So we booted up the game and we only had access to the Fighting Ground menu. And within that Fighting Ground menu, you've got options like arcade. Well, the main options are arcade, practice, versus, special match, and online. So arcade is arcade mode, practice is your training mode, and your training wheels and stuff like that. Versus, obviously, to be clear, it wasn't all unlocked, but practice had like training and tutorials. It had character guides and combo trials, all the same stuff that was in 5. Versus has one-on-one and team battle. Special match had something called extreme battle, which I bet is a bit like extra battle in 5, and then you had online. And then obviously separate from all this that we haven't seen anything of really is the what's it called? The hub thing. Battle Hub?
Oh, yeah, that's online, yeah.
We haven't seen any of that. So that's that bit out of the way. Done.
Wait, one more thing. The tag team? Did you say tag team?
Well, no, it just says team battle, so we don't know what that means. Okay. In Street Fighter 5, that is a mode where you can have 5 on 5, and it's like, so if you KO a character and you've lost half your health, your opponent's next character comes in and you've still got half health on your first character and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's been overtures towards team battles in Ultra Street Fighter 4, obviously in Cross Tekken, and obviously now again in 5. So and now in this. So we'll see what form that takes. It was not everything in this build was locked except for one-on-one versus mode. So yeah, I mean, and then when we get into the game, it's what do you want to know, Connor? Because you haven't played it, obviously. I guess is the
so. Having watched like anyone who's watched like the old Street Fighter 4 trailers when they were first announced knows obviously the gameplay we saw when it was first revealed was in a lot of ways different to the game you actually got your hands on when it came out. So in the reveal trailer, it looked quite slow. It looks like obviously they're going to spend a lot of time with showing the big punches and the counter hit animations and stuff. You're not going to see like full combos or anything. But how fast is the game compared to like Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 5? How loose is it?
It's definitely quicker than 4. I mean, than 5, sorry. It's definitely quicker than 5. Versus 4, I'm not sure. It's a bit early days to call. I mean, what I'd say is, one thing, just to touch on what you mentioned, you said there, you know, these games often change quite a bit from when they're revealed to when they're out. One thing that I thought was interesting is I felt the build that we played looked significantly sharper and better than the trailer.
Yeah.
And this is often the case. A little bit of inside baseball, like in the media, we just know this because we talk to devs, you know, and you learn that it's often the case. But trailers, because they have to go through so many levels of approval and stuff, and they take so long to put together and get approved and get localized for all the territories, are often captured months potentially before they actually go out. And so I'm guessing it's just literally the case that we were playing a relatively newer build, and the trailer, the first trailer at least, was just not very representative of what the game looks like now. I think it didn't look massively different. It just looked better, sharper. I think the colours popped a bit more.
Yeah.
I think the Guile character trailer they did after the fact was a bit more close. It was a bit closer to what we physically played. Now, as far as how the game plays, my feeling is this is the first 3D Street Fighter that doesn't feel like the basis for it was making a game that feels like Super Turbo, basically.
Okay.
I think Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 5 both have their roots in, first and foremost, a game that feels like the definitive version of Street Fighter 2. This feels a lot more like Third Strike. Just on that base level, you know what I mean? How that felt, there was a tempo and a rhythm to Third Strike that was different to the Street Fighter 2 series.
Yeah.
And whereas I think 4 and 5 made a concerted effort to feel like 2, I think because they know 2 is massively popular, this feels like they stepped back and said, what are we going to make that's different this time? We're not going to have a defined start point. And the result is, I think, probably completely by accident, this game feels a bit more like Street Fighter 3.
I mean, that's brilliant news.
Did you play much of the older Street Fighters, Connor?
Yeah, I played a lot of 4. I played a decent amount of 5, and Third Strike is also something I've dropped a bunch of time in, just because if you talk to people who like play Street Fighter 3 Third Strike comes up a lot as like, oh, it's like one of the best ones. It's obviously Street Fighter 2 also holds this like amazing place in people's hearts and minds, obviously. I mean, that's great news, right? They feel that it feels like a street like Third Strike. Like, to me, that perks my ears up. What about the drive gauge?
So
this is the thing, right? I mean, sorry, go on, Dorrani.
No, I was gonna say, I loved it. I love the drive. I think you liked it as well. People seem to think that it looks like really overpowered. From the comments I've like researched, I've been in the Reddit, other channels, YouTube comments. But I think it works well. It doesn't feel overpowered at all. It feels nice to use, and it adds like that extra bit of like gameplay mechanic to think about, but it doesn't take away from just like the neutral game.
Well, it redefined the whole game, really. And maybe
Yeah.
as we talk about this, as I mention them, Dorrani, you can find clips of us doing each
Yeah.
one, especially from those first couple of matches where we weren't actually fighting, we were just
Yeah.
using the moves. But basically, at a very high level, you can view it as a system that brings in mechanics from Street Fighter 3, 4, and 5. There's elements of all three of the past games in there unified in this system. But the big thing is that new bar, the drive gauge that's underneath the life bar, that really defines everything about how you fight.
Yeah.
Because your super meter now is just for your super moves. So that can charge up to 3 levels. It's more like Marvel vs. Capcom, basically. You can charge a level 1, a level 2, or a level 3.
Yeah.
And you spend that by doing those super moves, and that's it. And I think that's a really interesting choice because your super bars are always building. Pretty sure it still carries over between rounds. So that means that you basically are going to see those supers more often. Because in Street Fighter 5, you were always making a choice. Am I going to do an EX move or am I going to do a super? Am I going to extend this combo with an EX or am I going to use my super? If you're making a game that you want to be watched, esportsy, Capcom's made the wise decision to separate the super bar, which means you're going to see supers more often, which is interesting.
Because better players will usually take the combo extension, but if you're a casual player, you want to see the fancy super moves, right? You want to see the Shinshoken and whatever.
But this doesn't mean EXs aren't in the game. To be fair, EXs aren't in the game. They're now called Overdrive moves, but Overdrive moves are EX moves.
Right.
But Overdrive moves cost a bar or two of the drive gauge. And the drive gauge starts full every round, so you always start every round, even the first round, with a full drive gauge, which means, yes, you can rip off an EX move, an Overdrive, right out of the gate. I am going to keep calling it an EX move because it's force habit. It means you can rip off one, first second of the first round, you can toss an EX Fireball if you want, or whatever. But that costs 2 elements of the drive gauge. The drive gauge slowly recharges passively on its own, and also it recharges through your actions anyway. So, like, if you parry attacks successfully, if you land attacks, even blocking actually can, depending on the circumstances, can give you drive gauge back. But basically, the idea is you've got these core actions that you use the drive gauge for, but every one of them costs, and so really at the core of the game now is managing this bar, because if you fully deplete it, you go into like an exhausted state, and you are super vulnerable in that exhausted state. You cannot you take more damage, you dish out more damage, you're slower. If you get wall bounced when you're in exhausted state, you get stunned. It's brutal. So it's really interesting. It really changes the flow of the game. So to go down, though, there's Drive Impact, which Drive Impact can absorb an attack, and it costs 1 drive gauge, and it's basically a focus attack. It's got super armor, and when they're done, you hit them back, but you can be thrown out of it, stuff like that. So that costs 1 bar. There's the Parry. The parry is interesting because you can press and hold, and this is on the input that the V skill was on in 5, so two mediums. And this basically, you can press and hold this. So if you're fighting Ryu and he does a Shinku Hadouken, you can press and hold the parry button, and you will just automatically, there's no timing involved. There's no Evo moment 37 of the timing. You can just press and hold, and your character will parry everything. But then there's a perfect parry, where if you do that, there are benefits where you're going to be able to get a punish easier and stuff like that.
Right.
People seem to think that parry system is OP. What do you think the downsides are?
Well, you can be thrown out of it. You know, you can be drive impacted out of it.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of stuff that, I don't know. I don't think it's as powerful as people think it is, because both players have it. And actually, the parry is really key to rebuilding your drive gauge too.
Yeah.
But by allowing someone in range, in order to allow yourself to parry some moves, in order to rebuild drive gauge. And this is the thing: people see that mechanic and I think are worried about it being a defensive game. But I actually think, in a weird way, it's encouraging the attack.
Yeah.
Anything.
Right.
Then you got the overdrive. That's the EX moves, as I said. So any move works the same as it did before, where you use 2 inputs. Then you've got drive rush, which is from a drive parry. You come back to using the parry as an offensive tool.
Mhm.
You can forward dash out of it.
Which
Cut-
looks sick.
Kind of like an FADC from 4 in like a big forward momentum sort of.
It's a lot like I'm trying to think that there are characters in 5 who had moves like this where they would mantle forwards quite quickly. And you can, in some instances do moves out of it, and you can also do the drive rush out of normals.
Yeah.
Which is, so if you're doing it out of a parry, it only costs 1 bar. If you're doing it out of normals, it costs 2 or 3. So it's quite expensive if you're doing it out of normals. But yeah, that can be used to extend combos, to open up combo opportunities that wouldn't be there without the drive rush in the middle. And then last but not least, you've got the drive reversal, which is basically the V reversal from 5. Where it's just, it costs 2 bars, but it's a get off me move.
Yeah.
But yeah, so all those mechanics are key. You're going to be using them all the time, and you've got to be really like, I'm an EX move lover, Tammy's my main, so it's like not in 5, but in 4, all of her good methods of getting around fireballs all involved EX moves.
Yeah.
She's great with combo extenders for EX and stuff like that. But I found when I was toying around in this build, one of the things I noticed right away is I would just forget myself and use too many EXs, end up in exhausted state, and then be screwed and having to be on the defensive while exhausted. And when you're exhausted, of course, you can't use any of those mechanics because your bar's depleted and you're waiting for the exhaustion to be over, which happens when the bar fully refills.
Right.
So you can't parry, for instance. And so that's the thing, when people say the parry is overpowered, you can't really... If you're playing right, you won't be able to do that much parrying because you'll never have a full bar.
Yeah.
Because you're constantly doing other things.
When you're at your bottom, like 2-3 bars, it starts to get risky because you will forget. Like, you will
I'm sure
forget.
when once you get used to the game, it'll become second nature. Right?
Yeah.
You get used to a character, get used to a moveset. One thing that's really cool, by the way, I didn't notice this in the build, but people online noticed it, is when a character goes into exhaustion state, their stance actually changes.
Oh wow,
That's
cool.
So, Chun-Li, she goes from her modern stance that she's had since Street Fighter 3, she had it in 4 and had it in 5, she actually, when she's exhausted, she goes back to her Street Fighter 2 stance, where it's a more closed fighting stance. And Ryu likewise has like a stance that he had in like a beta of Street Fighter 4, not even in the final game, where again it's a really closed stance because it's like they're exhausted, so they're tired. So they slump a little bit and they're trying to close themselves off more, which is representative. So it's like even the visual feedback is there if you're the opponent, where you don't have to look at the bar to see that they're exhausted. There's little stars around their head, and physically they go a bit grey, and physically also you can see in their animation that they're knackered, which is pretty cool.
That is brilliant. How long does it take to recover fully from the exhaust state, would you say? Like, how long are you in that hole?
It feels like an age. I want to say it's at least like it's at least like 6 or 7 seconds.
Which is quite massive.
It's a lot.
in the context of like that's huge.
And like I say, that is the only way you can get stunned as well. Is you get hit with a drive impact when you're in stunned state. The drive impact also has really big knockback, even when it's blocked. So you can stun someone in the corner from quite far out of the corner. The corner, I think, is going to be, unless they change it, obviously fighting games, they always are tweaking right up to the last minute, but if they don't change anything, the corner is going to be scarier in this game than in any Street Fighter ever. Which again is interesting. But yeah, it's interesting that there's no stun, like apart from that very specific circumstance. So there's not a stun bar filling up. It's like absorbing a load of chip damage. Doesn't blocking a load of hits. Like in 5, you can slowly chip someone's stun bar up, right?
Yeah.
And in 4 the same, except it isn't a physical bar that you can see. It's just invisible. And yeah, that's the other thing as well that I just mentioned. Chip damage is more like Street Fighter 4 now. So if you're being a coward and you're blocking and you take a fireball, you take a special move, you will chip out if you've only got like the pixel of
But now you've got Impact Drive to, I mean, Impact Parry to Drive Parry. Sorry, to
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
negate
that's the
that,
thing,
basically.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's the thing. But it's nice to have chip backs. That feels
Yeah.
like it's a bit more aggressive again. So I think that was one of the things that made 5 feel quite defensive sometimes.
yeah.
Um,
It
yeah,
seems like gone.
go on.
No, I was gonna just move it on to the in-game commentary. The in-game
Yes.
commentary.
Oh, it's rad.
It seems so split, and you know what? I think I'm like 50-50 on it as well. I think it's nice, but I feel like after I've heard all of it for like a week when the game fully releases, and you know you're hearing it, I think I'd end up turning it off. Yeah, but it seems
I
like people
think
love it, people hate it, which
I
is
think one thing I noticed in our matches, if you watch our matches back, is like when we're not playing properly and we're just mashing, it doesn't sound very good. But when we
Yeah.
actually start playing properly, it does start reacting interestingly. And I really enjoy the the commentary. Obviously, there's only the one option right now.
Yeah.
For one for English, one for Japanese, but it like references like when you're playing as Chun, you use a move that's from Third Strike, and it references they're going Third Strike style. There's things like that, and I'm like, that's pretty sick.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. I think if I have to imagine that when the final game comes out, the commentary will be off by default, as it is in you know, I don't think they will have it on by standard in the final game. But obviously they wanted to showcase it here, so it was on as default, which is why people at home, a lot of the capture you're seeing has the commentary on, because people had to think to turn it off, and we turned it off for some games, but not all of them, because we wanted to hear it. But I think there's good variety in it, and it actually does alert you. It talks about things like the drive gauge, how there's a drive gauge deficit, or player 1 is almost out of drive gauge. The thing I'd like to see more from it is more of those individual references. So, like I said, a reference to Third Strike when you're playing as Chun and execute a particular move. If it fits in the moment, they'll say, "Oh, they're going Third Strike style," or like, you know, Ryu is busting out the. There's a commentary clip that's like Ryu is busting out the Shinko Hadoken. And it's great to hear that. I want to hear more of that individual. I mean, that means that a lot of recording has to happen, right?
Yeah.
It also means they have to get commentators back when they do more characters.
Oh.
But I think that's going to be key to this system. Is we're going to want a large range of commentators. I want to see the famous faces. You know, I want them to get everyone you would expect. I want, being British, I want F Word and Logan to be either have a dual commentary pack where it's both of them, or have individual commentary packs. I'd like to see like a Daigo commentary pack, you know, because I watched a video earlier of Daigo sort of dissecting what he saw. I'd like to see people like Max getting on it, who aren't usually tournament commentators, but are Street Fighter influencers.
For sure.
The Vesper Arcade guys, I'd love to see them do it. Obviously, you know, people like Ultra David and James Chen. I'd love to, he's not really a Street Fighter guy, but I'd love to see Aris bring his
it would be the best
to an in-game commentary
pack.
And so that's going to be the key thing, because it's sort of like Capcom with 5 was guilty a little bit of like bringing up a cool new feature and then just not using it. So a really good example that really annoyed me about 5 is they started doing the ability for the music packs. So they released those Street Fighter 2 music packs, but then they didn't release any for the other Street Fighter games. And also they did stuff like for the arcade mode, they had the remixes of the character select and victory themes and all that sort of stuff from all the other Street Fighter games.
Yeah.
All I wanted in 5 was the ability to use that music for the. I wanted to use the Street Fighter 4 character select remix in Street Fighter 5 in versus mode and online and stuff. And they never enabled that. And so hopefully this isn't a feature like that. I want this feature to expand. I want them to add lots of people to it. Any video game commentary is going to be slightly flawed. Anyone who plays FIFA, Madden, any sports game with commentary knows this. But I do think, especially as a teaching tool, you know, because some of this commentary on some of the matches we had, when we're away from each other, it begins to talk about the neutral game and how it's difficult to open up space. And like, at one point one of us throws a fireball, and the commentary literally starts saying fireballs are a really good ground game tool because of this and this. And I'm like, like a learning player could actually get something out of this.
Yeah, that's very true.
I definitely think the game sounds better when it's off. But
Yeah.
you can hear the music and stuff.
When you get like the soundtrack and all the hits and stuff in the back, loud and clear, yeah.
I don't think, but I like it. It's a really clever feature. But they have to support it right, is the thing, over time. And you can tell in the menu is built in such a way where there's going to be more announced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of learning players, do you want to talk about the modern controllers?
Yes, I would.
Something I'm totally fine with, because if you've like played Marvel vs. Capcom or like a million other games, you know that this has actually been a thing in fighting games for a while.
Yeah,
but it inevitably got a lot of buzz. Online.
People seem to think that you can't use the normal control scheme, it seems, from the comments, and I was like, what? I literally show both the controls. Yeah, it is exactly how it does what it says on the tin. It gets rid of all of the circle motion inputs, and it just goes into directions. And I will say, you still need to know how to play Street Fighter.
Here's the key thing I would say to the traditional Street Fighter players.
Yeah.
Is you can't do everything on that control scheme.
Yes, that's true.
Because it works like Smash. So you've got basically, sorry to say it, but it works like Smash. So it's the special move button, which is triangle, and a direction. So triangle. So for Ryu, triangle at neutral throws a fireball. Triangle and back does a Tatsu. Triangle and forward does his donkey kick, and triangle and down does. I've probably got those in the wrong order, but you see what I'm saying? Yeah, Hadouken is neutral triangle. Triangle and back is Tatsu. Triangle and forward is Shoryu, is uppercut, and triangle and down is the donkey kick. But Ryu has 2 or 3 new moves. He's got the charge move, the motion that powers him up to make his fireballs more powerful. He's got the one where he does like a small fireball in front of him that doesn't travel, but it's just like a blast of energy directly in front of him to knock back. You can't do those in the and Chun, she can't do spinning bird kick,
which is wild, because that's like
an iconic move, but she, in that mode, spinning bird kick is not possible for her. Right. And so that's the thing. It is definitely a something to get you started, something to help you understand the game, and the idea is definitely that you graduate.
Yeah.
Also, it's definitely built for control, and it's definitely built for controller. Like I tried to play some matches on this mode on stick, and it was not pleasant because it's not built for it. Because because the stick isn't built, for instance, for you to hold R2 and press and press the attack buttons to execute an auto combo. The auto combos, I want to say, are. So yes, you can press and hold R2 and execute the auto combo, but that costs you because every auto combo ends in an overdrive move. So every auto combo spends two blocks of your drive bar,
right,
and the super bar.
And sometimes it will do super at the end, yeah.
If you have the resources,
yeah. And so that's the other thing. And obviously, you can't differentiate between punches and kicks. You just have a light, medium, and heavy button, more like Mortal Kombat. So the game is context sensitively deciding if it's punch or a kick. So it's not going to be as easy to do, footsies and stuff, because you're not going to have definitive access to, Ryu's crouching medium, because you don't know if you press medium, is that going to come out or is something else going to come out?
Yeah,
I'm sure you'll be able to predict that system to a degree. So I don't think people who are worried that the game is going to be dominated by people using controller. Don't get me wrong. I think inevitably there's going to be people who place top 10 or top 5 or top 3 or even win tournaments using this control scheme, because that is how it goes. But I don't think it's unfair at all. And I actually think in real terms, you want to graduate so you can use all the character moves and use all the abilities characters have and stuff. And the standard Street Fighter control scheme is the same. It's still 6 button. It's not 8 button to confirm.
I don't really have any more talking points. We covered everything that I had written down, just naturally there. Anything else you guys just want to throw out there, or? because we are running over time.
Yeah, no, that's basically it. I mean, it's gotten me very excited just looking at like hearing this and obviously looking at the footage and stuff. I'm a bit jealous that your main has been leaked and mine hasn't, but you know, it's how it goes.
The thing I would say is this: I'm going to show my age here now. I've been to the first builds. I've been to the first playable build of the last 3 Street Fighter games. This, 5, and Cross Tekken. And actually, if you want to go into that zone as well, I also was there for the first build of like Ultra Street Fighter 4.
Right.
Every time I went to an event or went to Capcom's office or whatever and played the very first build, I played that build of 5 that only had Ryu and Chun in it and no one else. And Chun had like that million kicks Tenshu move that got removed from the final game in 5. And this is by far and away the best I felt coming out of one of these first hands-ons of a Street Fighter game. Also, the game feels far more complete than any of those did. Even though it's the same amount of content, you get a feeling this feels polished, it feels good. The presentation of like the menus and the music when you go into battle and stuff like that is rad. Yeah. And so on all those fronts, this feels like them going like, right, we understand 4, because the thing is 4 wasn't great when it launched. It's just it was hidden from us because it launched on the arcades and was in the arcades for 6-9 months and then came to console. So we really got the second revision of 4 that had, I think, 7 or 8 extra characters in the arcade version.
Yeah.
When we got it on console first. So I think that's the thing people forget. People remember the launch of Street Fighter 4 very fondly, but in the arcade, 4 wasn't that different to how 5 launched. Similar number of characters and some similar problems and stuff. But this feels like it's avoiding all that and it's going to launch in. It feels polished. It feels good. It feels like it could be out early 2023, but I think they're keeping their options open wisely and are just saying the year right now so they can release it in the summer or the spring or even the holiday if they want. But I hope it's out earlier as well because I cannot wait. Probably the best thing I can say, aside from what I just said about having played all the other early builds and thinking this one is the best, is I could have happily took this build home and I would have labbed it for weeks. I would still be playing it.
Yeah.
And when you've got a build that's only got 4 characters and 1 mode in it, if I'm saying that says a lot, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
I agree. It's gonna be a tough wait, but I think it's easy to get like a good feeling from something. It doesn't take long for you to just know that something is special, and that definitely felt like, oh, this is gonna be a great game, and it's gonna be a tough wait. But
I'm 100% saying this because I haven't touched it yet. And I know if I had touched it, I'd want it back in my hands as soon as possible. But I hope they take their time as long as they need on it.
Absolutely.
Just because first impressions are so big, right? You know, there are people now who are correctly saying, oh, if you jump into Street Fighter 5 now, it's great. And it is. But when Street Fighter 5 came out, there was a really negative impression to a lot of people. And it's hard to shake that, right? So
I think the thing they've learned is that if you have a first impression like that, it follows you around like a dark cloud, like a storm cloud, no matter what you do for the next 6-7 years of the game's existence.
Yeah.
Street Fighter 5 will always be remembered as that game that launched in that state. And people will forever say, isn't Street Fighter 5 a bit crap though? Even though it did get really good towards the end.
Yeah.
So the last 3 years in particular were excellent, but it's too little too late.
Yeah, so if they can keep this sort of really nice polished feeling that you two have, you know, experienced firsthand and keep it there and even better on launch, then I'm happy. That's brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. Can't wait to cover more of it when the game releases. You'll get my casual scrub feedback, and then you'll get these two boys, Connor and Alex, coming with the expert feedback, and it'll be a nice mix, man. I can't wait to get some more gameplay going. It is just a lot of fun. I think me and Alex, we were just laughing.
We were just laughing and screaming and playing real casual, like I say, just mashing out a lot, just screaming and enjoying the new mechanics rather than trying to figure out the nuance. But I think the thing is, that's how a lot of people are going to play this game.
For sure.
So, that was what I wanted to do, but hopefully next time they'll have Cammy in it, and hopefully I can actually lab out some. Here's what they've done to Cammy, because like, Shun, they've made some interesting changes. They got rid of like her little jumping fierce that hits twice,
Right.
so you can slightly juggle people. They got rid of that, so I'll be curious what Cammy looks like.
Yeah, hopefully we get another taster before the full release. But yeah, all right, that wraps up this video. Sorry if there was repeating footage in the gameplay. We are limited. We can't just show you everything. But I hope you got some good insight from us speaking about it and from the gameplay shown. My name is Dorrani. This is Alex and Connor. Peace out, everyone.